The smell of expensive leather and mahogany filled the conference room as I sat at the far end of the table, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Across from me, my husband Robert looked perfectly composed in his tailored suit, surrounded by 5 board members of Chen Harris Developments, the company he'd built into a multi-million-dollar empire. Or so everyone believed. My attorney, Patricia Morrison, sat beside me, her expression neutral but her hand occasionally touching mine under the table, a small gesture of support that meant more than she knew. I was 63 years old, and this was supposed to be the meeting where I signed away my future. "Eleanor," Robert began, his voice carrying that practiced warmth he used with clients, "I think we can all agree this needs to be handled quickly and quietly. Sign the modification, take the settlement I'm offering, and we can both move on with dignity." Dignity. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Where was the dignity when I discovered him with Amanda, his 32-year-old marketing director, at the company Christmas party last year? Where was the dignity in the prenuptial modification he was demanding I sign one that would give me a fraction of what I deserved after 28 years of marriage? I looked at the faces around the table. David Brennan, the CFO, wouldn't meet my eyes. Sarah Martinez, the operations director, studied her notepad intently. Only James Whitmore, the oldest board member and one of Robert's first investors, looked uncomfortable, his jaw tight. "The settlement is more than fair," Robert continued, sliding the papers across the polished table toward me. "$300,000, the house in Riverside, and your car. Everything else remains with the company, as it should." $300,000. The house we'd bought 20 years ago, now worth maybe $250, my 10-year-old sedan, in exchange for walking away from a company currently valued at $42 million. Patricia leaned forward. "Mr. Chen, my client, contributed significantly to this company's foundation and growth. We have documentation." "Documentation of what?" Robert's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. "Eleanor stopped working 28 years ago when we got married. She chose to be a homemaker. That was her contribution, making dinners and attending charity galas. Important, certainly, but hardly grounds for claiming ownership of my company." My hands started shaking. I pressed them harder together. "The prenup is clear," he continued. "Eleanor signed it willingly. She understood that Chen Harris Developments was my vision, my work, my risk. She has no legal standing to claim otherwise." I wanted to speak. Wanted to scream that I'd given up a promising career as a forensic accountant to support his dream, that I'd spent the first 5 years of his business keeping his books, analyzing investment opportunities, staying up until 3 in the morning reviewing contracts because he didn't understand the financial implications, that I'd used my network to connect him with 3 of his first major clients. But the words stuck in my throat. After nearly 3 decades of being told my contributions didn't matter, of being called just a housewife when I tried to discuss business, I'd almost started to believe it myself. Patricia opened her briefcase. "Mrs. Chen has evidence." The conference room door opened. Everyone turned. My son Marcus stood in the doorway, 26 years old and looking so much like I remembered his father from decades ago before success had hardened Robert into someone I barely recognized. Behind Marcus stood my daughter Lisa, 24, her face set in grim determination. "What are you doing here?" Robert's composure cracked for just a moment. "This is a private meeting. You have no business." "Actually, Dad, we have every business being here." Marcus walked in carrying a leather messenger bag, Lisa following close behind. "This concerns our mother, and it concerns the truth about this company." Robert stood up. "Marcus, I will not have you making a scene." "Sit down, Robert." James Whitmore's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Let the boy speak." My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I hadn't known Marcus and Lisa were coming. I'd barely told them about this meeting, not wanting them to see their mother at her weakest moment. Marcus set the bag on the table and began pulling out file folders, organizing them with the methodical precision he'd inherited from me. 6 months ago, Mom told us what was happening. The affair, the divorce, Dad's settlement offer. She was going to sign. She was going to walk away with almost nothing from a company she helped build. "She didn't build anything," Robert snapped, but there was something in his voice now, a thread of uncertainty. "That's what you've told everyone for so long that even Mom started to believe it," Lisa said quietly. "But we remembered things differently. We remembered Mom at the kitchen table with spreadsheets at midnight. We remembered her on phone calls with investors, explaining financial projections while you were out playing golf with clients. We remembered her teaching you how to read a balance sheet. Marcus opened the first folder. So we did what Mom taught us to do. We documented everything. Dad's home office has files going back to the company's founding, emails, financial records, meeting minutes. And Dad was careless, because he never thought anyone would look. He slid a stack of papers toward the board members. January 1997, 3 months before Chen Harris Developments was officially incorporated. Emails between Robert Chen and First Capital Investments. The investment firm was concerned about Robert's lack of financial expertise. They were going to pass on funding. David Brennan picked up the papers, his expression changing as he read. February 1997. Marcus continued, producing another document, a comprehensive financial analysis and 5-year projection for Chen Harris Developments. Written entirely by Eleanor Chen, née Eleanor Thompson, CPA. This analysis is what convinced First Capital to invest their initial $2 million. I felt tears burning in my eyes. I remembered writing that analysis, remembered the pride I'd felt when First Capital finally agreed to fund Robert's vision. That doesn't prove Robert started. March 1997 through December 2001, Lisa interrupted, spreading more papers across the table. 57 emails where Eleanor Chen coached Robert through complex financial decisions, explained tax implications of various business structures, connected him with Eleanor's former colleague Michael Rodriguez, who became his second major client, connected him with the Hartley Group, connected him with Davidson Properties. Sarah Martinez was reading now too, her eyes widening. Rodriguez and Hartley were our foundation clients. They generated almost 30% of our revenue in the first 3 years. Connections my mother made using her professional network, Marcus said. Professional relationships she'd spent years building before she gave up her career. Robert's face was reddening. This is ridiculous. Eleanor wanted to be a homemaker. She chose to support your dream, I said quietly. My voice surprised me stronger than I'd expected. I chose to put your ambitions before mine, but choosing to support you doesn't mean I did nothing. It doesn't mean my contributions were worthless. Marcus pulled out another folder. December 1997 through March 1999. 16 months of meeting minutes from early board meetings. Eleanor Chen listed as financial consultant and present at every single meeting. Her handwritten notes on these minutes matching the strategic decisions that shaped the company's growth. He looked at the board members. My father removed my mother's name from these minutes when they were officially archived, but he kept the originals in his home office. I suppose he never thought they'd matter. James Whitmore was studying the documents with the careful attention of someone who recognized their significance. Eleanor, I remember you at some of those early meetings. You asked sharp questions, made recommendations on risk assessment. She was just there for moral support, Robert said, but his voice lacked conviction now. Really? Marcus produced another sheaf of papers. Because these emails from you to Mom in 2003 say differently. Eleanor, I need your analysis of the Riverside project before I present to the board. Eleanor, can you review these contracts? I don't trust the lawyers. Eleanor, your instincts about the downtown development were right. We should have listened to you. Lisa stepped forward. And then there's the matter of the hidden assets. The room went very still. What are you talking about? David Brennan asked. Lisa pulled out a thick folder. My father has been systematically moving assets offshore for the past 18 months. 3 shell companies in the Cayman Islands, 2 investment accounts in Singapore, a property holding company in Luxembourg. All told, approximately $11 million that don't appear on Chen Harris Development's official books. Robert stood up abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. This is absurd. These are legitimate business holdings. Then why aren't they disclosed to the board? James Whitmore's voice was ice. Why aren't they in the company's financial statements? David, did you know about these accounts? The CFO shook his head slowly, his face pale. And there's more, Marcus said quietly. The affair with Amanda Prescott isn't just a personal matter. It's a liability issue. Amanda is an employee. Their relationship began while she was reporting directly to Dad. She received 2 promotions in 14 months, promotions that weren't based on performance reviews or merit. He slid another document across the table. This is from Janet Wu in HR. She filed a complaint 6 months ago about favoritism toward Amanda. The complaint was buried. Janet was transferred to a different department. Sarah Martinez picked up the document, her expression darkening. Robert, this is a hostile work environment lawsuit waiting to happen. If other employees... This is a witch hunt! Robert slammed his hand on the table. My personal life has nothing to do with company business. And these so-called hidden assets are simply tax evasion? Marcus finished. Because that's what the IRS will call it. I've already reviewed the relevant tax codes. Moving assets offshore without proper disclosure and taxation carries significant penalties, not to mention potential criminal charges. The silence in the room was absolute. I looked at my children, these 2 people I'd raised, and felt something break open in my chest. Not sadness, strength. They'd spent 6 months doing this. 6 months combing through files, building a case, preparing to fight for me even when I was ready to give up fighting for myself. Why? I whispered. Why would you do all this? Marcus looked at me, and his eyes were wet. Because we watched him diminish you for our entire lives. We watched you become smaller and quieter until you barely existed. And then when you told us you were just going to sign his papers and walk away, I thought... His voice cracked. I thought, no, that's not who my mother is. That's just who she's been convinced to become. Lisa moved to stand beside me, her hand on my shoulder. You taught us that integrity matters, that hard work deserves recognition, that standing up for what's right isn't negotiable. We're just applying the lessons you gave us. I felt tears rolling down my cheeks. Patricia handed me a tissue, her own eyes suspiciously bright. James Whitmore gathered the documents, his movements deliberate. Robert, I think we need to discuss this board privately. But before we do, I want to make something very clear. Chen Harris Developments has fiduciary responsibilities to our investors, to our employees, to the law. If even half of what's been presented here is accurate, we have serious problems. This is my company, Robert said, but there was desperation in his voice now. No, Sarah Martinez said flatly. This is a publicly traded company with a board of directors and shareholders. And if you've been hiding assets, conducting an affair with an employee, and burying HR complaints, you've violated your duties as CEO. David Brennan was already typing on his phone. I'm calling our attorneys and our forensic accountants. Robert looked around the table, seeming to realize for the first time that he'd lost control of the room. You're overreacting. Eleanor and I can settle this privately. No, we can't, I said. My voice was steady now, because this isn't just about our marriage anymore. This is about every person who contributed to building this company. This is about every employee who trusted you to run it ethically. This is about my children, who shouldn't have to watch their mother be erased from history. I stood up, and Patricia stood with me. I'm not signing your modification, Robert. I'm going to fight for what I earned. And if that means exposing every hidden account, every buried complaint, every lie you've told to make yourself look like you built this empire alone, so be it. James Whitmore nodded slowly. Mrs. Chen, I think the board would like to offer you a formal consulting contract while we sort this out. Your financial expertise would be valuable as we investigate these offshore accounts. And speaking personally, Sarah Martinez added, I'd like to apologize. Some of us at this table knew you contributed more than Robert acknowledged. We stayed silent. That was wrong. Robert's face had gone from red to ashen. You can't do this. I built this company. We built this company, I corrected gently. A lot of people built this company. You just took all the credit. The meeting ended shortly after that. Robert left with his attorney, already making calls. The board members scattered to begin their investigation. Patricia started drawing up new settlement demands, ones that actually reflected my contributions. But I stayed in that conference room with Marcus and Lisa, the 3 of us surrounded by folders full of evidence that my life had mattered, that my work had value, that I wasn't just Robert's wife. Thank you, I said, pulling both my children into a hug. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. You taught us to see clearly, Marcus said. We're just returning the favor. 3 months later, the settlement was finalized. Robert retained control of Chen Harris Developments, but agreed to a 60-40 split of assets, 60% to me. The offshore accounts were disclosed to the IRS and proper taxes paid, with significant penalties. Amanda Prescott resigned quietly, though not before Robert was forced to issue a company-wide policy on relationships between supervisors and subordinates. Janet Wu received a formal apology and a promotion, and I accepted the board's offer to join Chen Harris Developments officially, not as Robert's wife, but as the senior financial consultant I should have been recognized as decades ago. I'm 63 years old. I gave up my career at 35 because I believed in someone else's dream. But here's what I've learned: it's never too late to reclaim your own dreams. It's never too late to demand recognition for your work. It's never too late to teach your children that their mother is not invisible. Last week, I received a call from the Women's Business Association. They want me to speak at their annual conference about financial planning for entrepreneurs. They want me to share my story. I said yes. Because my story isn't about a woman who was erased. It's about a woman who was documented, filed away, and forgotten until the people who loved her most went looking for proof that she had always mattered. Robert taught me what it looks like when someone tries to diminish you. Marcus and Lisa showed me how to prove my worth. And I'm teaching other women that even if the world tries to write you out of your own story, the truth is always there, waiting to be found. My name is Eleanor Chen. I helped build a $42 million company. And I'm not invisible anymore.